I'm super competitive, he's super competitive, and I don't want to lose to him, he don't want to lose to me. I think this fight really decides not only who's the best pound for pound, but who's the best fighter in the world.
It's gonna come down to fortitude. He faced a lot of things that shows that he has the mental fortitude and mental toughness. And I think that that's gonna play a big role.
Errol Spence Jr. raised the intensity in training after his recent disrespect towards Tszyu has added tension to the fight. After escalating the tension, Errol Spence is now focused and fully committed inside the gym ahead of the highly anticipated showdown.
I work very hard, but I know that the harder I work, it's gonna benefit, my kids, my mother, my father.
Spence described his mindset as fully locked into battle mode, focused on domination and making a statement on enemy territory. Spence made it clear he intended to enter his opponent's hometown and silence the crowd with a destructive performance.
My whole mindset is in war mode, destruction, and trying to come to his hometown and disappoint him and his family.
Furthermore, Spence Jr. stated he is returning refreshed and still confident in his ability inside the ring. He added that he was conserving energy for fight night and expected a strong performance, urging fans to tune in on July 26 for a statement showing.
Oh, I'll be back. Oh, I'm looking better than ever. I'm rejuvenated, all this and that. So I just hold my reserves and just be like, I guarantee you just tune in July 26th. I'm put on the show.
Talking about the matchup, Ronnie Shields emphasized that Errol Spence Jr. needed to regain timing and confidence to return to top form, noting he was once avoided at his peak due to his dominance, and suggesting that level could return with proper preparation.
I mean, I don't know what Tszyu has to do, and I don't care what Tszyu has to do, because I'm with Spence. So.
I know.
But I think for Errol, Errol just had to be Errol, You got to get back to what got him to where he's supposed to be, Errol, he has one defeat, and that's against Errol Crawford. But before then, people were avoiding him like the plague, because, he's just that good. So I think he just got to get himself back into shape and get himself positioned to where he can do things that he did before.
Ronnie also noticed Errol is sharpening up in training and showing gradual improvement in timing and rhythm. He also dismissed the idea of an easy comeback fight, stressing that every return at that level carries real risk no matter the opponent.
Everything's looking good. He's feeling good, and he's trying to just recapture what he left.
Now, I've interviewed Robert Garcia, and I always ask his opinions on things and everything, and he said this is directly his opinion. I'm going to say it a little bit verbatim, but also at the same time paraphrasing. He says he feels that the reason why Spence went direct to a big fight against Tszyu and not took a tune-up fight was because he feels that maybe Spence doesn't have that much left in him. What do you think about that?
Well, what is a tune-up anyway? What is that? I've been hearing, you've been hearing this since I've been hearing that since I've been in boxing, tune-ups. There's no such thing as a tune-up fight.
On the other hand, Tszyu also went through a hard training phase, staying fully committed in camp while tightening his skills and conditioning ahead of the upcoming fight. Tim works on intensity and discipline, aiming to stay sharp under pressure and improve key areas before fight night. Speaking about Errol Spence, Tszyu admitted there were still many unknowns around Spence's current level, noting that some qualities never truly leave a fighter. Tszyu made it clear he couldn't fully judge where Errol stands right now.
Of course, you never lose certain things. It's a lot of questions for him, I can't answer that.
Tim expressed hope that Spence had returned refreshed and fully recovered, admitting Spence didn't look completely right during the fight with Terrence Crawford. Tszyu added that he still expected Errol to perform at his best level moving forward.
Yeah, I think he's refreshed, rejuvenated. I hope he is. When he fought Terrence Crawford, I felt like he looked a bit dizzy, you know? So I don't know. So hopefully he's all right. Hopefully he's at his peak. That's what I expect.
Giving his prediction on this matchup, Roy Jones Jr. viewed the fight between Errol Spence Jr. and Tszyu as a meaningful comeback test for both, praising Spence for taking on real opposition instead of tune-ups and highlighting his strong competitive mentality, while noting the matchup remains compelling despite their different career stages.
And I think it's a smart return because it's also against a guy who was on the way up there, who made it to the top, but had some struggles, and now he's on the incline trying to get back up too. So it's two guys trying to get back up. I think it's a great situation. But the biggest thing I gotta say that I love about Errol Spence is that Errol don't want no easy fights. Errol don't want to fight guys that are nobody.
He AKA somebody. No tune-up.
No,
he don't want no
He
tune-up.
wants challenges. You understand me? He wants challenges. And for him to challenge a person like Tszyu, when Tszyu has been regularly fighting for the last 3 years, he's been not doing much. That says a lot about Errol, but that tells you exactly how much fight is still left in Errol. Errol is a guy who's always coming to the party to dance. He don't have time to play no games, and you gotta love that about Errol.
Meanwhile, Peter Badel described the fight between Tszyu and Errol Spence Jr. as a true Crossroads clash, with both men entering under outside doubt and pressure. He highlighted the strain on Tszyu in a potentially career-defining moment, while also pointing to Spence's return after a long layoff, framing it as a high-stakes test shaped by timing, uncertainty, and expectations.
I think it's a beautiful crossroads fight. You've got two guys who seemingly are finished in the eyes of some. I mean, Tim, people think he's on the wane, and we haven't seen Errol Spence for 3 years in the ring, 1,009 days to be exact. So, look, that raises real question marks. At age 36, is the truth no longer the truth? And look, I think it's the moment of truth for Tim. I think if Tim loses this fight, it's over for me. I'd retire if I was Tim. But I think Tim can find something in himself, especially with Jeff Fenny training him. I do think there's been criticism of the new union, but I think it's the right union for this fight. And I know there's been controversy about whether it's the right call, but I think Jeff's got the right motivational tools, because I think at this stage of Tim's career, I don't really think he learns a lot technically.
Peter also described as the kind of fight boxing naturally gravitates toward, where pressure, narratives, and personal stakes all collide. He suggested there were underlying tensions and old remarks still circling around Tszyu that added an extra emotional layer to the buildup. Battle framed both fighters as being pushed by more than just rankings or competition, with deeper motivation driving them into the clash.
And that's what, look, this has got roots. This feud is pretty deep-seated, I believe. I mean, I know Tim was pissed off a couple of years ago about Spence having a crack at him, saying that he wasn't as good as his father. And I know that always touches a raw nerve with Tim because of what he's had to overcome to walk out of Costa's shadow and be his own fighter. So, look, I think what I loved about it, though, Macca, was this is a sign that Errol Spence is the real deal for this. He's not coming here for a holiday. I mean, I know they said that about Tony Harrison when he came here in 2022, that it was just a payday for him. I don't think it's a payday for Errol Spence. I mean, he will get paid well, but I think Errol still feels like there's more greatness in him. And
on the other side, Derrick James described Tszyu as a tough, aggressive fighter who pressures opponents if they stand still. He stressed that success against him requires movement, footwork, and smart boxing to avoid getting drawn into a brawl.
Tszyu's a very tough fighter, and you got to be able to use your feet and you got to be able to box him, because if not, he's going to try to bang you out. So, you just got to be prepared for that.
Adding to the discussion, Sean Zittel explained that Spence Jr. is physically the bigger man in his fight with Tszyu, noting the bout was set at 158 pounds at Spence's request, despite his welterweight background. Zittel also suggested Tszyu still shows slight hesitation after the Fundora fight, while describing Spence as a relentless Texas dog who keeps pressing forward until the end.
Errol's the bigger guy. The fight's at 158 because of Errol Spence. Even though Errol Spence has never competed at this level as a super welterweight, he was a career welterweight, he's bigger than Tszyu, and Tszyu thinks he's the bigger guy. And it was Spence who insisted on this fight being 4 pounds heavier at 158. So I thought between the size, between Tszyu I think having a little PTSD, which he says he doesn't, but I do see something from Tszyu. Sometimes when he takes punches now, ever since the first Fundora fight, there's that PTSD that shows up. And Spence, whether he's well faded or not, is a Texas dog. He's gonna just keep fighting and fighting and throwing until he goes out on his shield.
Sean noted that Tszyu has shown occasional lapses since the Fundora fight, but said that once he weighed everything up, size, jab, and form, his view shifted. Zittel admitted he initially leaned toward Errol Spence Jr. after the layoff, but ultimately changed his pick, backing Tszyu as the sharper and more effective puncher based on their recent performances.
Tszyu seems to, in spots since the first Fundora fight, have some hiccups. So I added all that up, the size, the jab, I thought maybe Spence will win this fight off this layoff. I'm not thinking that right now. I'm thinking Tszyu's gonna win the fight, and he's a sharper puncher right now based on their last times out.
However, Radio Raheem warned that Tszyu is being put under real pressure heading into the fight, stressing it would not be a respectful or cautious contest. He suggested the strategy could involve provoking Tszyu emotionally to pull him out of his game plan, which might lead him into unnecessary aggression. Raheem added that if Tszyu overcommitted, he could repeatedly walk into sharp counters like jabs and right hands.
Tszyu on notice, this is not some ceremony fight. It's putting himself on notice that we're not taking the soft edge either. We're gonna needle this guy and tune him up and maybe make him angry enough to fight outside of his best interest. You know, he might be baiting him into being angry because he will definitely run him into those jabs, run him into those right hands if, Tszyu is too over-aggressive.
Breaking it down further, Raheem noted the agreed weight for the fight between Errol Spence Jr. and Tszyu appeared set to keep Spence comfortable with no major weight concerns. He added that Spence likely did not view Tszyu as a size threat, while also suggesting that in their prime versions, Spence would be favored, but current form, inactivity, and momentum made Tszyu the more dangerous fighter heading in.
I like the weight that the fight is at because that means that one thing Spence won't have to focus on is making weight. He's just making it comfortable for him. That's letting you know that he doesn't think Tszyu is too big. This weight isn't an issue and he wants to take it off the table when it comes to getting ready for this fight. So you just make it big enough where you don't even have to think about it. That ain't gonna be an issue. And I like the matchup for a prime Spence. I think you would certainly agree if we're talking prime Spence and even and prime Tszyu, we're picking Spence. The reason that you're picking Tszyu is because the fade. We're seeing what we saw last time out, the age, the layoff, and the fact that Tszyu is active, Tszyu is younger, Tszyu could potentially beat a better fighter who would have beaten him in his prime because of these extenuating circumstances. That makes perfect sense.
Meanwhile, Zab Judah believed the matchup between Spence Jr. and Tszyu was exactly the type of test Spence needed for his return. He explained that Tszyu's style of coming forward and engaging could play into Spence's strengths, where he has historically excelled against aggressive opponents. Judah suggested the fight could serve as a platform for Spence to reassert himself and remind fans of his dominant best form.
And that's the kind of fight that Errol Spence needs. A guy like Tszyu. While Tszyu possesses a fight, he's gonna stand right in front of Errol Spence and he's gonna fight. That's the fight that we've known Errol Spence to dominate guys in. You know what I'm saying? We know that for anybody standing in front of Errol Spence toe-to-toe, he's gonna destroy them. So I mean, this might be the perfect opponent that Errol Spence needs to come back to show the world who Errol Spence really is.
Expanding on his analysis, Zab viewed stylistic advantage for Spence, noting Tszyu's tendency to come forward with limited defensive movement. He praised Tszyu's toughness and heart, but suggested that against a disciplined pressure fighter like Spence, that approach could become a serious weakness.
I think that Tszyu possesses the perfect style. He's gonna be right there. You know what I'm saying? He lacks a lot of defense. You know what I'm saying? Maneuvers, and I think that's where the downfall is gonna be at. Other than that, he's a very tough fighter. He comes forward. He has a lot of heart. You know what I'm saying? He's great. But a style like a Errol Spence walk down, that's not gonna be. That's woo. That's woo. That's watch what I say. No cap.
However, Paulie Malignaggi described the fight as intriguing because both fighters have operated at a high level, but are also at points where they may need rebuilding. Tszyu appears to be actively working his way back into form, while questioning Spence's consistency and activity level over time, implying that irregular scheduling may have affected his career momentum.
Obviously, it's an interesting matchup, you know, because both guys have been high-level fighters, but also both guys are looked at as guys who probably have to clean themselves up a little bit and maybe rebuild just a little bit, you know, and I think Tim is doing that. I think Errol not doing that. He's never really been a guy who I think kept a good schedule, and I think that hurt him in the end.
Jeff Horn described the fight between Spence Jr. and Tim as competitive, but leaned towards Tszyu as the slight favorite. He pointed to Spence's long layoff and inactivity as a concern, while noting Tszyu has stayed more active despite recent setbacks. Horn ultimately sided with Tszyu based on rhythm and momentum going into the matchup.
Look, it's an interesting one, that's for sure, but I feel like Tim surely has to be favorite for this one, even though both guys have had some pretty bad defeats of recent. Well, not really. Spence, he's been out and for quite some time, so I think that inactivity is probably not too good for him. And Tim's at least been active. He has had some bad losses, but I would have to be leaning towards Tim for this one.
As the anticipation is rising, Sean Porter argued that styles make fights, but leaned toward Errol Spence as the sharper and more precise fighter compared to Tim. He highlighted Spence's cleaner punch selection, crisp execution, and ability to land the right shot at the right moment as key advantages in the matchup.
Styles make fights, and I think that both guys got perfect styles to beat one another. I disagree. I think Errol Spence is the sharper fighter. I do. I think he's the sharper fighter. I think he's crispier. And I think his shot, his punch selection is better. And I think that he has the better shot of landing that right punch at that right time.
Bernie Thaw Boxer noted that a matchup involving Errol Spence and Tim Tszyu would draw even more attention if staged in Australia, where Tszyu holds strong local support. He added that Spence has never competed there before, making the setting even more significant, while still expecting a solid performance and clear victory despite the travel and layoff factors.
I would say Errol Spence, but you know, I think it'll probably go more well in Australia because Errol Spence never been to Australia. And, you know, he's still a big draw. He's still a big name. And, you know, Tim Tszyu obviously is a big name in Australia. So it just put more feather in his cap, you know, going to Australia, fighting a guy like Tim Tszyu in his first fight back after 3 years. And and I'm looking for him to look good and beat Tim Tszyu.
The debate continues with split opinions on both fighters. One is questioned after time away, while the other brings pressure and activity. It sets up a close fight where timing and mindset will decide it. No matter the pick, it stays unpredictable. Like, subscribe, and comment your prediction.